Crayons. The popular cylindrical color sticks that were important parts of our childhood go way back into ancient centuries. While they may be the French word for chalk pencil, they weren't exactly popular in this part of the European continent before Francis Clouet. One of the early artists to have used wax crayons landed a knighthood and a gig as an official painter for the monarchy, both rewards for the impressive modeled portraits he had developed using crayons. But he's not the first to have used them. Among the Romans, Greeks, Egyptians, and other nationalities, crayons existed in different forms, but modern versions started out of Europe as materials made from charcoal and oil. Because it isn't enough to simply view crayons in such brief terms due to the multiple changes it's undergone over the centuries, let's pop across the years a little more. You can easily be forgiven for not thinking of the word oleaginous when staring at the pieces of nostalgia. But that and the French word craie are where the world's most popular crayon brand, Crayola, derived its name. However, before Crayola became popular, other individuals and companies had experimented with various ways of improving the form crayons took and the quality of work they delivered. One of these is John Lemercier, a French lithographer who many consider to be the inventor of modern crayons. He came up with the paraffin wax as a stronger alternative for holding color pigments together at a time when the first cylindrical crayons, made with charcoal and oil, as we stated earlier, were in vogue. Lemercier had unknowingly struck gold, as his invention coincided with a loss of interest in the less durable oil pastels across the Atlantic. Fast forward to the late 1880s, a man named Charles Bowley realized that he would need better wax coloring crayons to mark his leathers with ease. To achieve this, Bowley started making crayons in the shape of pencils and recorded market success. And like Lemercier, he would later become partners with the American Crayon Company to meet rising demand. As innovation in manufacturing crayons expanded, so did the interest of business in the United States. Still, none stood out better than Edward Binney and Harold Smith's company, Crayola. Binney had initially headed his father's company, Peekskill Chemical Company, which produced carbon black, a product used for painting automobile tires and making them more durable. He would later team up with Smith, who also happened to be his cousin, to form Binney & Smith in 1885. In 1900, they added pencils to their product line. It was Binney's wife, Alice, a schoolteacher, who would later come up with the idea that selling crayons would attract more demand than pencils, which were more costly and therefore discouraging to obtain for their buyers. The pencils also contained carbon black, which is a toxic material, especially in the hands of young children. She recommended the name Crayola for their new project, and 121 years later, the company produces up to 3 billion crayons each year, 12 million on a daily basis. All enough to encircle the world 6 times in total if a few humans ever liked the idea. So, how are crayons made? Crayons are developed from paraffin, a byproduct of petroleum which combines smoothly with an extensive range of pigments. Paraffin's also preferred by manufacturers for the waxy texture it gives drawings made with crayons. However, during and after its arrival at the factory, paraffin must be handled under specific temperatures. When transported in liquid form by delivery truck, it's kept under a warm temperature to prevent solidification. If heated on site, it's melted in large quantities at 82 degrees Celsius before being transferred into silos. These metallic castles can hold as much as 45,000 kilograms of paraffin, more than the carrying capacity of the world's largest heavy-lift helicopter, the Mi-26. Useful as it is to the industry, workers exercise a lot of care around paraffin due to its flammability. They typically kit in breathing masks to avoid inhaling fine particles. The pigment is another important ingredient in the crayon manufacturing procedure. Crayons will not have their color without this. Interestingly, crayons were only made in a handful of colors in the early days of production. Nowadays, the options are a lot more varied, as more than 100 different colors of crayons are possible. The pigments are required to have been broken into a fine powdery form, as the melted paraffin will not mix without this. Suppliers create pigments through a mixture of chemicals in wooden tanks. Afterwards, they're filtered and dried using a kiln. What's left from these phases are separate molds of hardened pigment. These are converted to meet manufacturers' color specifications through mixture, pulverization, and blending before transport to the crayon factory. On the other hand, liquefied wax is first stored in large drums, similar in size to a washing machine, where it's then mixed with clay to obtain strength and maximize the number of crayons it can produce. Other non-toxic chemicals are then added to the wax to improve its quality. Now, the pigment and paraffin are ready for combination. The powdery pigment, which may also be mixed with material designed to make the crayon more dynamic, is introduced to the wax and heated till both become pasty. The quantity of pigment added is reliant on saturation levels and the transparency or otherwise of the color. First, the wax's temperature is cooled with cold water at a temperature of 55 degrees Fahrenheit or 13 degrees Celsius as the wax travels through molding tables containing hundreds of pencil-shaped holes. The blades within these molds prevent the mixture from developing bubbles or lumps. Depending on the pigment and the amount applied to the wax, cooling can take between 3 to 9 minutes. An individual mold can make around 1,200 crayons at a time, and collectively hold forms that number up to 2,400. In the past, the mixture was manually poured from buckets into the molds. Today, this can now be done using machines. Formerly also, operators had to use hand cranks to force the crayons out of the molds, but that's now easily done with hydraulic pressure. You may find factories that utilize combinations of manual and automated procedures in making their crayons. There are also different molding techniques used in creating crayons. These include compression, extrusion, injection, roll molding, and hand pouring. Each of these techniques are usable in different contexts, depending on the scale and purpose of the production process. Next is the inspection phase, where the newly molded sticks are examined for breakages and bubble formations. If either of these flaws are present, the faulty products are sent back to be remelted and molded all over. Crayons are additionally checked at random for features like their density, color, among other standards. Crayon companies are similarly careful about documentation and record-keeping practices to maintain accurate awareness of parameters for mixing, test results, and production volumes. This stage is very important to companies as customers expect their goods to perform uniformly and consistently under similar conditions. It also helps to save costs, as the more defects manufacturers are able to prevent, the less likely they are to undergo the repetitive process of a remake. Another interesting element of the production process is the labeling phase. Once the quality check is complete, the crayons are swaddled in paper labels and arranged in boxes. Both of these stages are automated. Since the young users of the products tend to toss things into their mouths, Crayola crayons, for instance, have labels that are stuck on the wax using harmless water and cornstarch. The boxes used in packaging themselves contain a variety of information, including bits on safety, usage, and manufacturing details. Because crayons are easily breakable, companies try to ensure that they exit the shipping phase safely and arrive at their users' homes in the same condition they were at production. And that brings us to the end of today's video on crayon manufacturing. Do you know of any DIY methods for creating your own crayons? Let us know in the comments section, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and give us a thumbs up. I'll see you in the next one.